And the definition of it, from the beginning, formalized in the Act, is precisely land where there is no human influence. Right? Now, the fear, of course, was that such places were disappearing, that it was harder and harder and harder to find any place where there was no trace of human impact. If you follow this further through, they define it even further, which, one, generally appears to have been affected primarily by the forces of nature, with the imprint of man's work substantially unnoticeable. So it's a place, so it's gotten really narrow now. It's got to be federal land, first of all. It'll also turn out it has to be federal land of at least 5,000 acres in size. It's got its primeval character, whatever that is, and it doesn't look like there are people there. The people don't stay. It has outstanding opportunities for solitude or a primitive and unconfined type of recreation, which I believe is our favorite kind, right? I love that primitive, unconfined recreation. Thoughts about what that might mean? So we know it's primal, primitive. It has at least 5,000 acres of land, or is of sufficient size as to make practicable its preservation and use in an unimpaired condition. And 4 may also contain ecological, geological, or other features of scientific, educational, scenic, or historical value. There's some things you can't do in wilderness. One, obviously, is live there. That would be completely in violation of wilderness. There shall also be no commercial enterprise. You're not allowed to make money there. And no permanent road within any wilderness area designated by this act. And then in that ellipsis, there's a whole bunch of stuff about, well, in the event of an emergency or loss of life or something, then you can fly a helicopter in. But otherwise, there shall be no temporary road, no use of motor vehicles, motorized equipment, or motorboats, no landing of aircraft, no other form of mechanical transport, and no structure or installation within any such area. What this means, yes? What are national parks? There are wilderness areas within national parks, designated as wilderness. But national parks aren't themselves automatically wilderness areas. You know, a national park can actually have lots of roads in it and lots of buildings. If there's going to be a wilderness area overlaid on a national park, it's got to meet these criteria. I mean, what this means in practice is that when they build trails in wilderness areas, they're not allowed to use chainsaws. I kid you not, they have to use handsaws. They're not allowed to use mechanical drills to break up rocks to create the bricks to build the trails with. They have to just find rocks. Because you're not allowed to have any mechanical device. You're not allowed to have a bicycle, because that's a mechanical device. You are allowed to have a horse. A horse is not a mechanical device. There's some very fine distinctions to be understood with respect to this idea of a wilderness area. But the one that really has to be remembered is the idea that a wilderness area is primeval, it's natural, it's untouched by humans, it's pristine. This idea is really deeply entrenched in American environmental thought, American environmental philosophy, and American environmental activism. There are a lot of organizations, such as the Wilderness Society, for which the protection and designation of wilderness areas is sort of the reason to be involved in environmental politics at all, right? This is the highest goal. This is the highest standard of protection for land under our federal laws. Now, if Mann is correct, and Crosby and the others are correct, this idea of wilderness is deeply problematic, right? At the very best you can say for it is that such conditions were created in the Americas as a result of what are these pandemics, which were reinforced and capitalized upon in with the use of outright force and sometimes outright genocide, right? In other words, if you think wilderness, the highest form of nature, is an area where there are no humans, this is not what the Americas have always been, and therefore must remain. This is not somehow a timeless result of nature untrammeled and primeval. This is actually the result of a complete depopulation by disease and conquest of 2 entire continents. Now, that alone might be problematic to start with. And there are plenty of instances in which some of our most iconic national parks were consolidated as national parks through the use of force to remove the native populations that did still remain there, even if only in small numbers, right? But there's a further piece to this argument, which is perhaps even more problematic, and that is the part that says, no, actually those landscapes that you think are so perfect and worth preserving aren't the result of nature's work, they're actually the result of those previous human populations and the things that they did there. That part really starts to look complicated. In other words, nature doesn't take care of itself automatically, naturally, in these places where there's apparently no human trace. These places were actually produced by human activities. They would look different in the absence of human activities, right? Whether we're talking about fire as a practice to enhance wildlife habitat, for example, which had profound effects on forest structure in higher elevations and wetter places, also had profound effects on maintaining grasslands in drier, lower sites like the Midwest, or whether you're talking about the outright manipulation of watersheds to create terraces for agriculture. And then finally, we're going to get to this question of Terra Preta and the Amazon. The argument basically becomes not just that wilderness doesn't exist, except perhaps by historical accident, but furthermore, that high ecological values can be the result of human activity rather than the absence of humans. Here's another picture. This is taken from, again, from 1491, the book, depicting 200 feet tall, 700 feet outside, the Pyramid of the Sun in Teotihuacan is the world's 3rd largest pyramid. It was built in stages in the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD atop a deep 300-foot cave created by a lava tube that may have represented the place where humankind emerged onto the Earth. The pyramid and the rest of the city are oriented on a rectilinear grid 15 degrees, 25 minutes from true north, a direction that may have aligned with the cave mouth. I tried to find a more recent photograph of this, but they all look like they came out of tourist brochures and didn't give you a sense of the city around this pyramid. They only depict the pyramid in kind of abstraction from the other buildings in the area. So it seemed like this was a better one to use. Here's a map depicting clusters of dense population before 1492 along the main stem and major tributaries of the Amazon River, right? So it's maybe a little hard to see the little dappled, dimpled areas along the river. And this is an area, this is a big part of the article, an area of the world that for a long time was believed to be utterly incapable of supporting dense human populations no matter what. The argument being that the soils of the Amazon rainforest simply can't sustain dense populations of humans because they're not fertile enough to grow crops on. They get tons of rain, they get tons of heat and sunlight, but the nutrients are simply not there. They get leached out of the soil by very, very high levels of rainfall. You can grow big, huge trees, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have fertile soil underneath. And this was the prevailing wisdom until very recently among scholars about pre-contact Amazonia. Now we see, this is a map depicting sites where they have found this stuff, this soil, this ground, that they call terra preta, and I want to talk for a few minutes about it. So you can see that it's not uncommon. It's spread, it maps pretty nicely with that map I just showed you. It's widespread through the basin of the Amazon. This is what it looks like. On the right, you see a layer of terra preta on top of the substrate. Up here in the upper left, you have the contrast between the different kinds of soils. The sort of regular soil on the right and the terra preta on the left. And this terra preta is what is found around these sites along the river and its major tributaries. Okay? And it's found in ways that suggest non-natural formation. This isn't just, oh, well, it's wherever the floodplain is. This is actually in like rectangles. And it's in rectangles in proximity to archaeological sites that suggest human occupation and presence. It's not a natural formation. According to recent research, this is something that a lot of scientists are actually getting very, very excited about. And I'll talk now about why. Some soils are thought to be 7,000 years old. Compared with the surrounding soil, terra preta can contain 3 times as much phosphorus and nitrogen. Those are key nutrients for growing crops, right? And as its color indicates, it contains far more carbon. In samples taken in Brazil by William Woods, an expert in abandoned settlements, there's an expertise to cultivate. At the University of Kansas in Lawrence, the terra preta was up to 9% carbon compared with 0.5% for plain soil from places nearby. By the way, terra preta is just Portuguese for black earth. Okay? Terra meaning earth, preta meaning black. A hectare of meter-deep terra preta can contain 250 tons of carbon as opposed to 100 tons in unimproved soils from similar parent material. That difference of 150 tons is greater than the amount of carbon in a hectare worth of plants. That means turning unimproved soil into terra preta can store away more carbon than growing a tropical forest from scratch on the same piece of land, even before you start making use of its enhanced fertility. So there is more carbon in that soil than there would be in the trees if it were tropical forest. And there's an added advantage, which is, if you're worrying about carbon sequestration, it's underground, which means it won't escape to the atmosphere. If it's in trees, as soon as those trees die or burn, that carbon will in fact be released back to the atmosphere and will no longer be sequestered. Johannes Lehmann of Cornell University in Ithaca has studied with Glaser and worked with Sombroek. He estimates that by the end of the century, terra preta schemes in combination with biofuel programs could store up to 9.5 billion tons of carbon a year, more than is emitted by all today's fossil fuel use. So if we can figure out how to make this stuff, this terra preta, understanding, or at least we believe it was actively created by Native Americans thousands of years ago, we might actually have here a scheme for sequestering gargantuan amounts of carbon. And the result would be carbon that's actually in the ground, and therefore sequestered for potentially very long periods of time. And we would also have remarkably fertile soil that could be used to grow, for instance, biofuels. If you could find a perennial crop to grow in that terra preta and harvest it so that you weren't plowing up the soil, you could have both the biofuels and the carbon sequestration on a scale that might actually be adequate to the problem of fossil fuel CO2 emissions. The problem, of course, is we don't know how to make it. We don't know how they made it. We don't even know why it works. In other words, we think it has something to do with adding charcoal to these soils. But that's not the only thing that needs to be added. It's not the only thing that's present in these soils. And we don't know what else needs to be done, and we don't know how to do it. We also, we honestly don't even really understand why it is that it persists the way it does. It doesn't just sort of stay there inert and inactive. As it mentions in the article, there are places in the Amazon where people go to these old terra preta sites and they dig soil out of the ground and they take it home and they use it for potting soil. But they apparently have learned never to take all of a layer of it. They leave the lower foot or so, because if you do that, when you come back a few years later, it's made more of itself. Right? It actually has a sort of self-perpetuating, self-reproducing quality to it, and that part we don't understand at all. So, yeah? What's so good about carbon? Good question. Well, it's what life is made of, for instance, as a starting point. That's a nice thing about it. There's too much of it in the atmosphere in the form of CO2. I'll talk about this on Thursday. This is the major driving factor behind global warming is CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere. And it's always moving around. If we could get more of it out of the atmosphere and put it places where it can't easily get back to the atmosphere, we could reduce or reverse global warming. But it needs to be done on this kind of scale. I mean, we're talking about billions of tons that need to be somehow pulled out of the atmosphere. And we haven't yet come up with a way to do it. So that's why this is so important. Yeah? Is it generally agreed by everyone that it was created by humans? I'm sure there are some detractors out there, but I don't believe that they have any alternative explanation that holds any water, right? In other words, I mean, these are areas, the Amazon is, have any of you been to the Amazon? Yeah? How did you find it? Like, what were your thoughts or responses or reactions to it? It's really wet. A lot of plants. You can feel the moisture in the air. I was there at the end of the dry season, and you could just taste the smoke in the air because so much of it was burning. Even though you couldn't see the fires, it was just a pall of smoke. But yeah, I mean, you get there and you think you're going to go get to see this tropical wonderland, and basically you get there and it's just uncomfortable and you can't see anything because it's flat and all the vegetation is so enormous and so dense that you can't hardly, and your visibility is about 4 feet in every direction. And it's, if you could actually walk around the top of the trees, you might get to see all the pretty birds, but you can't really see them from the ground. It's kind of disappointing. But where am I going with that? No, I don't believe there any alternative. I don't believe anyone's come up with a plausible way of explaining how this stuff was formed if it wasn't formed by human action. Well, presumably it was formed precisely to create fertile soil, right? But we don't know in detail how it was created. So I promised you a story about feral cows, and this actually gets back to the wilderness point. So it actually does relate. So when I did my dissertation fieldwork, I stayed in this canyon in a mountain range in Arizona, and the canyon had recently been bought by the Fish and Wildlife Service. And the Fish and Wildlife Service was adding it to a refuge, and the refuge had been created, about 10 years before, when they bought this enormous ranch, and they'd thrown all the cattle off the ranch to hopefully help restore this endangered quail. And they thought that the cattle were the problem, and that the cattle were preventing the quail from being able to establish successfully on this big ranch. And so they bought the ranch, and they took the cattle off. It turns out that didn't actually help the quail at all, and they've since more or less given up on the quail. But meanwhile, they were buying more land and adding it to the refuge, and they were particularly attracted by this canyon because it would add a great birding destination to the refuge. It was a beautiful mountain canyon in southern Arizona. There's tons and tons of different birds. So they bought this place. They bought it from a rancher, and the rancher was this curious former stockbroker from New Jersey who didn't actually spend much time up there, and only had a handful of cattle. And he had tried to, or rather his cowboy had tried to get all the cattle out of that canyon, but had not been able to succeed because the cattle had gone sort of untended for such a long time that they were virtually wild animals, feral animals. And So we maintained this little trap corral up the canyon, which we would put water in, and there'd be a little stick holding the gate open, and we hoped that the water would attract the cows who would come in and knock the stick over and trap themselves in the corral. And this would be a good way of capturing these cattle one by one, because there were only about half a dozen of them left. And it was a drought, so there was very little natural water available to them. And this worked in a sense. I mean, one day I went up there, and there was a cow in the, it's actually a bull in this, no, it wasn't a bull, it was just a cow. But you never saw these cows. You could walk for days up in this canyon, you never see the cows. They were like mountain lions as far as they didn't want to see you. They were completely invisible. And I went up there, and this cow was in the trap corral, and I thought, well, I better get it some more water so that it won't die of thirst before somebody gets up here with a trailer to get this cow out of here. And this is all very funny because the refuge was busy promoting this canyon as pristine, natural, wild, and all the rest. And they had made such huge efforts to get the cattle off the ranch down below, but they really didn't quite know what to do with these cows up in this canyon. They didn't really want to shoot them because they were afraid that was going to piss off the neighboring ranchers as some kind of violation, right? But I got into this corral and very nearly got gored by this cow because this cow hated people and particularly hated me. And this cow was way scarier than any mountain lion. This is actually a mountain range that actually has jaguars in it. There were plenty of scary animals, potentially deadly animals up there. But these cows were way scarier than the mountain lions or even a jaguar as far as potentially threatening humans. Anyway, they basically decided to give up and just let these cows live up there. And I would reiterate, don't get yourself between a feral cow and whatever it wants because they are scarier than shit. All right. Yeah, we can talk later about whether that's a wilderness area with cows in it. I also still haven't told you the punchline of the prairie dog story, but we'll do that later. All right. See you later.